I decided to analyze The Horse Whisperer, a novel written in 1995 by English writer Nicholas Evans. He was born and grew up in England and graduated at the University of Oxford. He worked for many years as a journalist and wrote some documentaries about famous writers. In 1993, he met a blacksmith who told him about some people who had the gift of healing traumatized horses. For this reason, in 1995, he decided to write his first novel, called The Horse Whisperer. It was published in 1996. The story is set in New York, and the main character is a girl, Grace McLean. Her mother, Annie, works as an editor for a magazine, and her father, Robert, is a lawyer. On a snowy day, Grace and her friend Judith decide to go riding. While the two girls and their horses, Pilgrim and Gulliver, are on an icy slope, Gulliver slips and hits Pilgrim. The two horses and the girls fall and slip towards the road, where an 18-wheeler hits them. Judith and Gulliver die, while Grace and Pilgrim are severely injured. Grace's right leg will be amputated, and for this reason she will shut herself away and become really withdrawn. Moreover, she will have problems relating with her parents, especially with Annie, since they will have different reactions to the accident. Pilgrim is the only bond between Grace and Annie, and since he is severely traumatized, those who take care of him decide to kill him. Nevertheless, Annie does not accept this decision and wants to do everything she can to take care of Pilgrim and her daughter. She had learned about some people who have the gift of healing traumatized horses. So, she decides to go to Montana with Pilgrim and Grace to meet Tom Booker, a blue-eyed man who was said to be a horse whisperer. While in Montana, Annie and Grace feel better and strengthen their relation. Annie and Tom get really close and eventually start a secret affair. Although Tom had made a lot of progress with Pilgrim, Grace is still really insecure, and the idea of horse riding still terrorizes her. Eventually, Tom manages to tame Pilgrim and force him to lie down so that Grace could trust him and mount him again. At the end of their stay in Montana, during a party, Grace finds out about the secret affair between her mother and Tom. The next morning, she decides to run away with Pilgrim without telling anyone and rides wildly through the countryside. She accidentally bumps into a herd of Mustang horses, and Pilgrim starts to fight with the stallion of the herd. Both Pilgrim and Grace are in serious danger, but Tom arrives and he fortunately manages to rescue them. However, he had realized that his affair with Grace had come to an end. So he decides to commit suicide and approaches the skittish stallion, which was rearing, and eventually hits Tom's head with his hoof. Grace, Annie and Pilgrim come back to New York. At the end of the story, Annie finds out she's pregnant and her baby will have Tom's eyes. The main theme of the story is relationships. Grace's accident highlights the tense relation between Annie and her. However, while in Montana, both mother and daughter face together a difficult situation and become stronger and closer than before. Another important aspect of this novel is love. Tom cures Pilgrim with love and treats him with respect, without making him suffer in vain. Love is not only romantic, but there can be love between a human being and an animal. However, it can have negative consequences. In fact, Tom and Annie fall in love, and during their relationship they completely forget their lives. But as soon as they realize that their affair is wrong and decide to break up, Tom will commit suicide. an additional theme is trust. Pilgrim healed thanks to trust. During the story, Grace starts trusting at first Tom and then her mother. Trust strengthens the relation between Grace and Annie. Finally, an additional theme is the lack of a place where the characters can feel at ease. Annie's father had died, so she does not feel at home in New York, but her affair with Tom makes her feel good with herself and belong to a place for the first time. The novel sold more than 15 million copies worldwide, and in 1998, Robert Redford directed the homonym film. He plays the role of Tom. Scarlett Johansson starred as Grace, Christine Scott Thomas as Annie, and Sam Neill as Robert. There are lots of differences between the book and the movie as regards the final part, and the director focused on some aspects rather than others. For example, in the movie, the relationship between Tom and Annie has a major role, while the pain and the healing of Grace are overshadowed. The end of the film is totally different from the book. After Annie manages to ride again, she comes back to New York with Robert and Pilgrim, while Annie stays for a little while in Montana. Tom does not die, and it seems like Annie is not pregnant. Moreover, there is no mention of the divorce between Annie and Robert. In the book, after Annie finds out she's pregnant, she tells Robert about her affair, and they will break up. I really appreciated the book and the film because they deal with some important themes and relational dynamics. Both film and book highlight how the relation between humans and animals does not only have practical utility, but it is possible to establish a relation of love and trust. Moreover, animals do not only help humans, but they can be helped. There are lots of species in the world because they can help each other. I also like the relation between Annie and Grace. Grace's problems are due to her mother working so much that she is never at home, and this affects their relation. This does not mean that suffering or lack cannot be solved. A tragic experience does not only represent a loss or a break, but it can strengthen a bond and transform that loss into a rebirth of something. I liked mostly the book because the movie does not deal enough with the tragedies that the characters experienced, but they are overshadowed or completely missing.